I'll see a restaurant open and it closes within 2 months. Most of them that I met were most interested in making the food and serving their customers and diners. Many of them were not all that interested in running the business. Sometimes when labor costs are high, we as founders and leaders make penny-wise, pound-foolish decisions. Instead of having the $20 an hour employee who might actually show up on time and do a terrific job 40 hours a week, we say, no, I'd rather optimize for the $18 an hour person.
Turnover rate tends to be quite high too for this space. It's probably about 120% turnover rate on the average. You're trying to hire for 5 times the volume, and some of them, they just don't show up.
I worry sometimes that when we kind of go down that slippery slope, we end up with a suboptimal workforce. They're always one phone call away from just leaving and saying, I'm not coming in today.
Thank you for coming here today, Geoff. I can't believe it. This is the first time we are doing this after we've met now for like 9 years. It's crazy.
It's wild.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for having me in. Always fun to be in Workstream HQ or you know, one of your offices ever since we met at Stanford all those years ago.
I know. I mean, why don't we just try to start from there? Let's kind of bring the room back into how we very first met, because I feel that is a very fun, very tech, Silicon Valley story of how we very first met.
It is.
Yeah.
And I think even your presence there is a good part of that story. Right? If I recall correctly, it was a Stanford GSB event.
Yes.
But Ella was in school. You weren't even in school.
Yes.
So why were you in that class?
Yeah, so I was actually crashing that class of my wife because I was not supposed to be at the class, but my wife, she was actually a full-time student at this actually Stanford Business School. But part of the class it is called Startup Garage, and you can actually have other people who are not from Stanford join. So I joined as one of the team members. And I think we met you, Geoff, when we're in the final round to pitch a panel of these judges. And then me and my wife and 2 other engineers on the team, 4 of us came together to pitch you.
That's right.
Yeah.
I remember it well. And the fact that you weren't even a student was one of my favorite parts about the story. And then you, if I recall correctly, you stage dove me afterwards and said, like, okay, let me get your contact information. We're going to have lunch and I need to ask you some questions.
Yes.
So then we got together for lunch for, I don't know, probably a year or 2 after that, right?
Yes.
We would just hang out. And I followed the Desmond story as you were off starting other businesses.
Thank you.
And then, when you were ready to start Workstream, I remember you telling me about it and saying, like, okay, we're going to put this seed round of capital together, and do you want to join? And it just seemed like such an obvious yes. I mean, I'm often asked what we're looking for when we think about investing in companies, and the number one thing is a founder who's off the charts, tenacious and passionate and just going to run through walls to make something happen. And, I had already learned all that about you. So.
Thank you, Geoff. You are very, very kind. And maybe that is a good first question to ask you. Like, could you share with us a bit about this space that we're in? We are trying to build the best, Workstream, we are trying to build the best HR, payroll, and compliance software for this restaurants and more. Tell me more about back in the days, what caused you to want to invest in this space? It's a huge market, but what gap do you see? What are some of the problems and gaps that you saw in this space that you felt we could have a chance to maybe build something that could be helpful?
Yeah, well, look, the first thing, of course, was you.
Thank you.
Of course. The second thing, though, is I think the way that you just articulated that, the need is real.
Yeah.
I've been fortunate over the years to meet lots of entrepreneurs who started small businesses and restaurants in particular. I would say that most of them that I met were most interested in making the food and serving their customers and diners.
Yeah.
Many of them were not all that interested in running the business.
Yeah.
handling payroll, handling compliance, hiring and firing, getting people to show up on time. Some of those things that, of course, are important parts of running a business too.
Yes.
And I think historically, the software stack for restaurants has been pretty thin.
Yeah.
It just hasn't been all that great. And so, enter a company like Workstream who's trying to be more of a simplified one-stop shop for a restaurateur to be able to make a lot of those problems kind of simpler and to some extent go away. I think that's a really big value proposition that allows all these terrific entrepreneurs out there to focus on what they're good at and what they want to do, which is, providing a great dining experience and the food and atmosphere.
That's very cool. It sounds like you have talked to quite a lot of these restaurant owners throughout the course of a career. Maybe a couple of quick follow-ups on that. What do you see they use, like in the past? What do they typically use to run their payroll, to run HR, to do hiring? Like, what do you think they use from what you have known in the past?
Historically, it was all very manual. I imagine that's changed a lot in recent years, but historically, all that was very manual. So, payroll was like the equivalent of writing checks, and then it became, sign up and we'll, send you a transaction, ACH every 2 weeks, right? Direct deposit. I think compliance was mostly hope for the best.
Yes.
Right? I didn't see a whole lot of thoroughness on that other than, the initial new hire checklist of fill out your I-9 and that sort of thing. But I don't know that there was a whole lot of compliance. Yeah. And then hiring, I still see them around, right? The help wanted signs.
Yes, it's crazy. After so long, it's still around.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And I happen to have 3 sons who are all kind of college age now, but when they were at the age and even now have worked in those type of businesses, they would find that if they apply to an online job posting or a classified ad, nobody responds. But if you walk in, that's how you get hired.
I know.
And so. That's kind of still how things are today. I think in a lot of cases, I'm sure that's not true in every restaurant, but historically.
Got it. You hit upon a point that we really care about, which is trying to build better compliance for these restaurant owners. Can you share a bit about the side kind of thinking? Why do you think owners are not investing as much in this compliance as they should? And what could we do to try to help them understand how crucial it is to get HR compliance right,
Yeah. Well, I think the reality is that most compliance type of things fall into the camp of, rainy day problems.
Yes.
You really hope you don't need to deal with it, and then, at some point maybe you do, and it becomes too late. So, I think car insurance is an interesting example where there are regulatory reasons that we get car insurance. And then also, the big insurers have made it pretty easy.
Yes.
Right? You can sort of just press play and say, hey, I just want car insurance for some amount of money a month. That problem kind of goes away. Someday I'm going to get in an accident, and hopefully the insurance will just work the way it's supposed to.
Yeah.
So I wonder if there's an opportunity for us, and maybe you could talk more about what we're doing with compliance, to do something similar for restaurants where, there's a just press the easy button.
I love
equivalent of compliance.
I love that. I feel like you have now set up the whole product vision that we have for this work stream. We are truly trying to make HR compliance and payroll as easy as it is as trying to press a button, because in the age of software, AI and more, it shouldn't be so hard to be compliant, whether it's trying to manage your clock in and out, meal breaks, overtime. Those are the things that when I talk to many owners, many of them struggle with, because you're having tens or hundreds of this hourly worker that come and go, very high turnover rate. People who have to clock in out of their shift, who have to take their breaks twice a day across tens of stores. It is not easy to actually manage that. So what we are trying to do at this work stream for restaurant owners is to make it very easy and seamless. With one click, they can get their compliance, HR and payroll all done. So
I love that. What a tremendous vision. Because again, I'm going to assume that most restaurateurs, that compliance is not what anybody gets up in the morning to say I'm really excited to handle compliance again today, you know. But if they can sort of make those problems go away, then they can focus on the things that they're excited about.
Yeah, no, that is so true. Sounds like you have talked, you've talked to many restaurant owners, they care a lot about like trying to grow. They care about the food. They really care about the craft. Other than compliance, HR period, one of the big topic that I keep hearing people talk about, it is actually labor costs. That is a big problem that is going up and up. Like I think California hourly rate keeps going up, right? And I think labor cost typically is like at least 30% of the P&L for any like store. Typically is like labor, is rent, is cost of food sold, which is the COGS and the food. Those are the typical costs. And I think like for rent it's typically quite a fixed cost, and for food you also don't have much like leeway typically. I think labor cost is a pretty big deal, right? If you are running sales of about 1 million per year, you're probably paying about 200 to 300K per store per year, which is very, very high. I think about workers' comp, benefits, of course, like paying overtime and more. How big of a concern is this is cost and this labor cost from what you know?
I think it's a huge concern.
Yeah.
And also, I have a maybe slightly contrarian take here, which is I am afraid that in a lot of businesses, and this doesn't just apply to restaurants, I think this applies to businesses of all kinds, including software businesses, sometimes when labor costs are high, we as founders and leaders make a penny-wise, pound-foolish decision to try to optimize around the margins.
Yes.
Right? And since we're in California, it's very expensive here. As an example, instead of having the $20 an hour employee who might actually show up on time and do a terrific job 40 hours a week, we say, no, I'd rather optimize for the $18 an hour person who's not going to, right? Or I'd rather optimize around the person who doesn't need guaranteed 40 hours a week. I'll just give them 19 so I don't have to give any extra advantages. I worry sometimes that when we kind of go down that slippery slope, we end up with a suboptimal workforce. Where no one's very happy. And to your point, that's when you end up with those really high churn. Right? None of your employees are very happy, and therefore they're always one phone call away from just leaving and saying, I'm not coming in today. So easier said than done. I don't pretend that this is like a wave your magic wand thing. But one of my favorite examples of this is In-N-Out. I have continually been just stunned at what a great job they do. I mean, every time I go into an In-N-Out, doesn't matter what neighborhood I'm in, the employees are smiling. They know their menu cold. The place is clean. The bathroom's clean. And by the way, I'm pretty sure that's the exact same workforce that almost every other restaurant is hiring from, right? So what combination of value proposition are they offering to be able to get their workforce to show up so well? Right? And I don't know all the secrets, but I feel like if they can do it, the rest of us can do it too.
I love that point. I think that is so powerful and so strong. And I think that aligns to something that we really believe here at this Workstream, is that investing in HR drive profits. We believe that so much. And I think that is something that not every owner knows, but in my chats with many of the top owners, they all know that.
That's right.
You have to invest in HR, payroll, systems, and tools, because those drive profits. To your point, and sometimes in a very short period of time too, because as you say, making those investments up front may very well reduce your employee churn significantly. Which also is going to reduce your customer churn significantly. And just a little change on either of those things can become very profitable very quickly. Totally. No, I think so too. I think that is a very, very key topic. And maybe since we're on this still topic about restaurants, I talk to many restaurant owners every day too, and I still see a lot of them using very generic software. They use software that I think more and more people are more and more like savvy, but they like to use generic HR payroll software that is really not built for them. They use software that is built for a tech company. They use software that is built for a law firm, dentist that is hiring full-time people, and that's not hourly workforce. Curious to hear, what do you think is some of the gaps and difference you see between trying to like tools that is built for more full time, like some of the owners use, and tools that is built for restaurants hourly space?
Yeah. Well, I think they are different, right? And that's why companies like Workstream, exist to serve them. I think each of these verticals really does have special needs. You mentioned legal as an example. I mean, legal is an example where there's hourly billing.
Yeah.
It's actually down to the 6-minute increment in most firms, and this kind of. So they have their own needs that they're very bespoke and different from what a restaurant needs.
Yeah.
And so I do think that, you tell me what all the differences are, but I could just conjure up a number where it just makes a lot more sense to pick a vertical solution that's focused on your industry, that knows what your staff is going to want and need. Yeah. And probably that's going to end up being a good investment.
Thank you. Yes, we for sure see that. I think like some of the main thing is like when you use generic software, it's really more based for like full-time workers,
right,
who tend to be there for at least 2 years, 3 years. They're small email based with lower turnover rate, So I think even those 3 pointers is a huge difference compared to trying to manage this hourly workforce that has to clock in and out every single day, has to take like a meal break every single day, may have to work overtime, and the overall turnover rate, it tends to be quite high too for this space. It's probably about 120% turnover rate on the average. So if you're having a 3-store cafe chain with 100 people, you're having to hire more than 100 over people every single year, or at least like 2 people every week. That's crazy,
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, so I feel that is the main difference and gaps that we see.
Yeah, and I think to that point, one thing that I imagine every one of these restaurant owners knows, but certainly seen it in lots of high growth startups too, is you want to always be hiring.
Yeah.
Because even if there's a given week where you don't need those 2 people, next week you're going to need 2 people.
I know.
So you need to kind of keep running that hiring motion and funnel, because otherwise you're going to have periods where you just don't have enough bodies. Yeah. And I think, we see that hurting restaurants.
Yeah. I think so. I feel like that is one piece of advice that I always give both to restaurant owners, but also other tech founders, which is, I think, is a very famous piece for saying by this. I think Vinod Khosla and Keith Rabois, they always say, the team you build is the company you build.
Yeah.
So I think we both really believe in that so strongly, right? Focusing on the team you build, trying to invest, hire the right people to train them is so crucial.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. I was running a bit late because I was jumping off a call with a recruiter that I'm trying to hire.
Oh, good. How did it go?
She was good. Good. So she's coming into office tomorrow afternoon to chat further. So I feel like I really embody how much I care about talent and these people.
Yeah, you're recruiting the recruiters.
I know.
And what's she, if she takes the job, what's she going to focus on? What kind of roles?
Should we focus a lot of like US roles? We have we have about 15 roles open in the US. Fantastic. Across like sales, marketing, CS, ops, finance, and more. Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. And maybe talking a bit about tech, and we can come back to this actually restaurants afterwards. Maybe to give the room a bit of an like intro about you. I mean, I think many of them should know you. I love to learn a bit more because you joined this company called Yelp, which is a very famous company in the very early days when there were probably only about 15 people, 20 people.
I was the 10th employee, but yes, it was the early days. Yeah.
So we love to learn more from you. Tell us more about the early days of Yelp. Like, how was that like, and how do y'all grow so fast over the years? And just love to hear a bit, trying to trace our roots back to this early days of Yelp. When you joined, it was only 10 people, and now it's scaled to like tens of thousands of people and doing so well. You were there for more than 10 years and you did so much. You built many teams, you served many clients. So curious to hear a bit about that like journey of yours.
Yeah, well, thanks for saying that also nicely. At the time, this is back in 2005, I was working at eBay. And got to work there in sort of the eBay hypergrowth years, which was really fun, and work on a bunch of different parts of the business. But I had some, friends who were really connected from the PayPal side of things. And, famously, Keith Rabois was one of them, who you mentioned, and is now our co-investor in Workstream.
Yes.
So Keith introduced me to his friend Jeremy Stoppelman, who had just founded this company called Yelp. And I got together with Jeremy one day and we hit it off. I really loved the way that he thought about the business. His whole focus was, hey, there are all these hidden gems around the city, these wonderful businesses, but that no one ever heard of, right? How can we uncover those hidden gems and help you find, anytime you're in a new part of town or in a new town that you're not familiar with, how can we help you find the best restaurants, the best places to go, the best clubs, the best cafes? And that was his idea in the early days of Yelp. He said, hey, we're going to start one city at a time because it really has to be a city by city kind of a thing. It was San Francisco originally, and then later we did, second, third, and fourth cities. Anyway, I sort of, fell in love with this idea and was fortunate enough to join in those early days. And, it was not always smooth sailing, but, we kind of would take 2 steps forward and 1 step back. And eventually ended up becoming, a destination that a lot of consumers would use to, talk about the businesses that they like the best. Yeah. And then businesses could use to attract new customers.
Wow. And you were there for 10 years or 12 years?
Yeah, I was there full time for about 11 years and then on the board for a couple more years after that.
Wow. So. And in that time, you all scaled from 10 people to more than 10,000 people?
5,000.
5,000. Wow. Really huge. Wow.
Yeah. So good size. And by the time I left the board, I think we were doing about $1 billion in revenue. We took the company public sort of in the middle of my time after about, I think, 7 years there.
Wow.
And so
very quick, after 7 years, from 10 people, 7 years to go public. Wow.
Yeah, right. Things were faster then. Nobody goes public in 7 years anymore, but unfortunate for me as an investor.
Wow. That is really cool. What made you want to join Yelp in these early days? It was just 10 people. Sounds like it was an idea. Things were not very clear. Yeah. Bring us back to those early days. Why do you join, and what were some of and maybe what led to that growth too?
Yeah. Well, I guess I'm going to reference it back to Workstream for a moment, right? And look, when I invest, or back when I was, working in startups, when I would join a startup, I was really asking myself 2 questions. One was, what do I think about this founder? And the other question was, is this a big idea?
Yeah.
And so in the case of Yelp, this first conversation and second and third that I had with Jeremy really made me think, this guy's special. He sees the world in a different way, and I could see it. He might do something really great here. I'd love to kind of come along for the ride. Yeah. And then, related, at the time, there were these yellow pages. I know the younger people may not be familiar with the yellow pages, but, at the time, there were these yellow pages. That was a big industry. Yeah. It was a really big industry.
Really? It was huge?
Tens of billions of dollars
really?
in these yellow pages.
Yellow pages?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Oh my God, that's crazy.
That's how local businesses would advertise back then. That was the number one source of local advertising.
What?
And, anybody who was paying attention to the internet back then was kind of like, that's going to go away. There's going to be something better. Yeah. And so I think, Jeremy and Russ, the Yelp founders, had that. That was part of the answer, was look, if we do this thing well and it works, you can see that this is going to be a big business. Yeah. And so that combination of we're doing something special with a special founder, got me excited and got me excited to join. And it's very similar to why I chose to invest in Workstream, right? I mean, it was one part, I just wanted to invest in Desmond. Thank you. And then one part, this opportunity around HR and compliance and hiring for restaurants, that's a big idea.
Yeah. Thank you. No, that is very important. And maybe trying to part 2 of my question was Yelp grew very quickly in 7 years from early stage to going public. What led to that growth? What were some of the key things that helped you all grow so quickly and build so much?
There are a lot of things I think that have to kind of go right for any one of these ideas or companies to really take flight. First, I'll say that the real insight was this: getting people to talk about the hidden gem businesses that they find. Yeah. And so the notion of online reviews was not new in 2005. Yeah. But what was new and what Jeremy and Russ and the team came up with was this idea of almost like a lifestyle blog that the Yelpers, the people writing the reviews, would have their own page that would say, hey, here's all the cool places I've gone. Here's all my favorite restaurants. This is the place I like for Indian food. This is my favorite burrito place. This is my favorite nightclub. That kind of a notion where it was a little like a local reporter uncovering the coolest spots.
Yeah.
That was an insight that, compared to a bunch of the other companies from the same time, got people excited to write a lot more content and add more photos and, add reviews and whatnot. So that was insight number one. Insight number two then was this idea of kind of building the community, the Yelp community, market by market, right? And so they really focus on San Francisco exclusively for probably the first 18 months. And then at some point, it really started to work in San Francisco. So we said, I wonder if we could do that in a second and a third city. So our second city that really broke through was Chicago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And, and it sort of became city by city like that, where we'd really put a bunch of emphasis. We would hire a local community manager to sort of be the face of Yelp there. And that worked. And, we sort of tried to do that somewhat linearly as the market grew. And
curious to ask, when you launch a new city, what do you all do to help that city to launch?
Yeah, there were a couple things, and this has all been well documented at this point too. But I'd say the first thing we would do is, before we ever sort of like opened it to the public, if you will, we would hire a bunch of scouts who tended to be like stay-at-home parents and college students and whatnot. And we would say, hey, we're going to just pay you on an hourly basis for a few months. Go write reviews of every local business that you've been to. And the reason we did that is we wanted to make sure there was a base layer of content, so that when you went to Yelp for the first time in Chicago and you go look up a famous pizza dip place or something like that, at least there's a couple photos and a couple reviews, right? As opposed to like, that's the most famous place in town and you don't even have anything. That's going to turn people away. So we started with that. The next thing we would do is we would hire a local community manager. And that person's job really, and we would select for people who frankly had a lot of friends and were sort of like, the unofficial mayor of, the food and life scene in their town. And their job was to kind of help nurture this community of other like-minded folks who wanted to find terrific businesses and write about them.
Interesting.
And so that was sort of the second thing. And we would give them a little bit of a marketing budget to try to give a little bit of a push to, kind of let people know it existed and whatnot.
That's so cool. Thank you for sharing that. That is so cool. I think your journey at Yelp is really very powerful. It really shows from very early stage to going public to really being at scale over $1 billion. So congrats. Maybe trying to shift gears a bit to your work post Yelp. Yeah. We all know now, you run a VC fund. Could you share a bit more about what does your fund do? What's the focus and just share a bit more about your new role now.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm very fortunate to be in venture now, so I still get to hang out with founders who are doing exciting things like Workstream. Our firm is called Burst Capital, and there are 4 of us who are partners. Incidentally, we all worked together at Yelp way back when. That probably gives you an idea of the kinds of things we're interested in. Now, most of the companies we've invested in have been software to some extent, but a lot of marketplaces, a lot of things that are, touch consumers or small business owners, some that are enterprise software as well. But, we really love the kinds of things that we can all touch and feel. And, that's why we've ended up investing in a bunch of, restaurant-oriented businesses that, hey, I like to go to restaurants just like everybody else, right? It's fun to kind of be out in the real world. And so, in particular now, we're very interested in, how can AI help SMBs and Main Street?
Yes.
Right? How can we make Main Street better? I think we all win when we walk down a street that's populated with, great local businesses. Nothing wrong with chains, but I'd much rather walk down a street that is lots of independent businesses and small chains as opposed to the giant ones.
Yes.
And so, anything we can do to kind of, help the independent restaurateur, the small business owner of any kind is really good.
Yes, 100%. Maybe that's a very hot topic that we think about quite a bit. How can AI help restaurants? At this Workstream, we built a lot of really powerful AI tools to help restaurant owners to do their work better. Curious to hear from your lens, how do you think AI can help restaurant owners? And what are some trends that you have seen of how owners have used AI to help their work better?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're in the early innings. Right, and so there's going to be a lot of experimentation. I think in a lot of cases, if I was a business owner or restaurateur, I would be looking at, some of the restaurant-focused businesses like yours and saying, "Oh, what are you seeing?" And, I would be looking for the things where I think the juice can be worth the squeeze.
Yeah.
Sometimes in these new tech eras, I think for an independent business owner, you can waste a lot of time doing something that will only have a 1% improvement to anything, right? That's nice, but that's probably not the kind of, juice that most of these business owners are looking for. They're looking for something that can, either increase revenue by 5 or 10 points, right? Or significantly save cost, or, significantly improve the customer experience. So those would be the kinds of things I'd be looking for. There's obviously a lot of stuff swirling right now, and I think it's probably going to depend on the type of business that you are. One real easy application that we've got an investment in a company called Hosty is voice AI for restaurants specifically. So this is, online ordering and reservations and hours and all the usual things that you might wish to do over the phone, but they're more complex than the old robocalls. Voice AI is getting pretty good now. And so I think that's a great case where in this era that we've talked about where labor is tight and is expensive, I would love to take my, expensive, well-trained, thoughtful host and have them providing a great experience in the restaurant, but not being interrupted by answering the phone to 100%. Answer dumb questions.
100%.
Right? There's a time, but most of the time, voice AI is a great solution for something like that.
I love that because at this Workstream, we have also rolled out a new voice AI product focused on screening, hiring, onboarding, training, and more. Because when you think about like a 5-star or 10-star restaurant trying to hire people,
I mean that's a perfect application, right? Because I think I could imagine that if I was hiring somebody, of course I'm going to want to meet them before the final hiring. But if I can get rid of that initial screening stuff that's very time consuming, both in its, action, but then also just to get a hold of that person. It takes several days, like you said, that could be really valuable. So I think there's going to be all these kind of applications, just like yours, where restaurants will be able to sort of save material time and effort.
It is so hard. Like I feel like for me, I'm now trying to hire on my own for my own company, Workstream. I have about 15, 20 roles that I'm hands-on trying to hire for. And it's so much work to do this first round screening, second round, and finding out the time. I can only think like as this restaurant owner, you're trying to hire for 5 times the volume. And some of them, they just don't show up. Like I think every 10 candidates, only 1 or 2 will finally show up to your store. The kind of flake and volume is just very, very hard to manage.
No question.
Maybe trying to transit a bit about do you feel like you have done a lot of investment so far? Curious to hear about what are some of your wins and this losses when you think about restaurant tech. What are some companies that you have like they are doing so well, and what are some that maybe not as well?
Well, I don't know that I have a lot of not as well in restaurant tech. So that's the good news. And maybe that just sort of goes to the opportunity, for restaurants to be helped by technology, in the future. Obviously, there's Workstream. Which is why we're both here today, and Workstream's doing so well, and I'm so excited by what y'all are continuing to build. Another one that that I mentioned just a few minutes ago that's a very new company is this company called Hosty. That's really, again, it's about the host or the hostess and trying to make sure that their time is spent providing a great experience in the restaurant, but therefore voice AI doing some of the things that they otherwise might get distracted with in terms of, on the phone, either answering questions or anything like that. Another one that you and I have talked about before is Instawork. They're not restaurant specific, but this is a labor marketplace that's all focused around temporary staffing. So this notion that I may need to flux up 5 or 10 extra people over the next couple of weeks because it's a drive time for us, and so Instawork can get a bunch of temporary professionals in there to help for a couple of weeks at a time.
Very helpful. Thank you. Maybe as we shift gears back into talking more about like restaurant owners in the year 2025, and as we look forward to 2026, there's so much macro changes. Tariffs are going to like impact food costs. Immigration policy will impact the people that you can hire. there's, I think on the compliance front is mixed. Some rules are being tightened. I think like more and more, like every small business now, more and more have to offer 401k, which is something that it is not very well understood in this space. There's something called ACA compliance, which is Affordable Care Act. Once you have more than 50 employees, you have to offer them benefits or you could get sued. So I think with the changing landscape across compliance, costs, tariffs, and more, what's some advice you have for this restaurant owners as they look to grow and thrive in the second half of 2025 and into 2026?
Well, first of all, let me just say to any restaurant owner watching, thank you for what you're doing.
Yes.
I so appreciate it. It makes sort of, America and Main Street great to be able to kind of go to all these different places and experience, sort of going to somebody's living room, if you will, and getting the experience of eating at a different place.
Yes.
So my hat is off to anybody that does the hard work of starting and running a restaurant for sure. To your open-ended question about what advice would I have, I would say that maybe a very hard thing to do and a very obvious thing to say is I would make sure that I'm appropriately capitalized. That's an easy thing to say and a hard thing to do again. But one of the sad things that I see happen sometimes just on my neighborhood street is I'll see a restaurant open and it closes within 2 months.
Yeah.
And I would assume anytime we do a startup, right, just like you've done your own, it's going to be rocky for the first year. It just is.
Yeah.
And so being prepared for that and making sure you're appropriately capitalized feels really important so that you can focus on the medium to long term, right? Because if you're trying to make every nickel stretch to the end day to day, I think you may make some of those penny wise, pound foolish decisions. Yes. Like you may hire weaker employees, you may undertrain them, you may end up with poorer ingredients, right? And you may end up with some of these things that are fundamentally going to provide not a great customer experience in the medium to long term.
Yeah.
So I know these things are all interdependent. As it relates to sort of HR and compliance and payroll and all those fun things, I would think about a product like Workstream that can make some of those things easy. Let's do the right thing. Let's be compliant if we're a 50-person plus company. Let's make sure we're offering the correct ACA thing, but without hiring an expensive HR person necessarily.
Yes.
Right? Because unless you're a very big business, you probably don't need somebody like that full time. But you do need to get these things right.
Yeah. So. Yeah. No. That's very helpful. I think two points that you shared. One is about being well capitalized to really grow and to really go through all the ups and downs. Yeah. Secondly is to actually invest in HR, payroll, and compliance for this restaurant owners because it's so crucial. So that is very, very helpful. And maybe one more question is maybe talking a bit about predictions in terms of the restaurant landscape. It has gone through so many changes, right? Think about how Yelp has changed the space. Think about DoorDash, Uber Eats. Think about AI and software, HR. What are some trends you see in this restaurant landscape in the coming years that you think that you predict or forecast will come? It could be anything. It could be on the HR payroll front. It could be on the marketing AI front. Just very curious to really kind of pick your brain to kind of learn more from you on that.
My thought, and it's interesting that you kind of reflect back to 20 years ago and whatnot, but I think that the winners here, especially for the restaurants that don't already exist, that we don't all know about yet, are going to be those that are thoughtful about how to marry well-trained, terrific staff with the right kinds of tech.
Yes.
And I don't think the answer is the same for every business. I think it's probably almost surely not exactly, how do you go to market and what's your offering? As an example, we all know about some of the places that you might go now and you can order on your phone. Yes. Or check out on your phone.
Yes.
I can think of a couple that I go to that have implemented that very effectively.
Yes.
And it's great. And in fact, they're very highly staffed.
Yes.
right? So there's always staff around to answer any questions I might have, to bring my food quickly, to keep the table cleared, to provide me a terrific experience. So it's not about not having staff, right? But it's about using that staff in a smart way.
Yes.
And in the particular places I'm thinking of, I don't really need to ask a lot of questions when I'm placing my order. I'm happy to just have that whole thing kind of work, right? And so that's just one example. We've talked about, the screening voice AI stuff that you do. We've talked about the, kind of voice AI for answering questions on the phone. So I think each restaurant's going to need to figure out for themselves what's the combination of staffing and AI support or tech that's the right offering for their business. But I have a feeling the winners will be those that are thoughtful about that, as opposed to trying to do everything poorly.
Yeah.
Right? Think about what do we want to be great at, and let's be great at those things.
Yes.
And then have tech fill in around the edges.
100%. I feel like that's the same for us. We truly see like the best owners, the best brands, they truly know how to leverage technology, software, and AI to help them to really do their job better. We have seen, at this Workstream, we are very thankful. We partner with actually 46 of the top 50 top fast food brands. Think about top brands like Clovis, Jimmy John's. We are very close partner to them, serving. As of now, we work with more than 30,000 stores throughout the whole country, from Clovis, Jimmy John's, Dunkin', Burger King, Papa John's, and more. I was just on the phone today with the largest Papa John's owner, who has more than 250 stores across 3,000 employees, and they use us for all their payroll, time and shift, HR, hiring, and more to really help them to really do their job better every single day. So kind of trying to link that back to what you are sharing, we truly see in my day-to-day job, I see the best owners, the best brands, the best leaders. They truly think about how they can leverage technology, HR, and software and AI to drive profits and to help their business to do better.
Yeah.
But it's also not easy because you need to marry that so-called understanding of restaurant hourly space and the very unique and special needs of that with technology and with this software. So yeah.
Makes sense.
No, this is, I think I'm so thankful to you, Geoff, as we kind of round towards the last few minutes of this. I think it's so thankful. I think our 8-9 years friendship has been so special for me. I feel like you've been so helpful to me on every round of funding. I feel like you're very often my very first call when I have some problem that comes up, So I feel like I also feel that we are just getting started. I feel so great to still feel energized. I think we've been running Workstream now coming into our 8th year. It's been an 8-year journey, but I feel like we are just getting started. I think thanks to your help too, we have raised about $120 million in funding from your fund, from Founders Fund, CEO of Zoom, CEO of DoorDash, from Mark Cuban, from Chain Smokers, and more. But funding on the side, I really truly feel that I'm so thankful for me to be on this journey to support restaurant owners and to support restaurants. I want to double down on what you shared. It's very special what they are trying to build to make America what we are today because of the job and work that they are doing every day, right? To really provide that whole customer experience is so special. Both my parents, they are both actually hourly workers. My dad is a driver, my mom is a cleaner. So my dad used to and still does send food from point to B or send parcels from point to B. So I grew up in his van and I saw how big of a gap in terms of software built for this space. That's why me and my team came together, and I truly do feel that even though we are 8 years in our journey, it's just getting started, and I'm so thankful for all your partnership, mentorship, and more.
Well, thank you for having me in. Thank you for having me along for the ride at Workstream. I'm just, delighted about what you and the team are building here. And it's really fun for me to get to be part of it because, restaurants are such a special part of, my experience as a consumer and an American. And I'm so glad that you're helping the entrepreneurs out there who are making it happen.
Awesome. Do you have any final words for the audience, whether it's about restaurant, about HR, about us? Workstream or any final words from you?
Well, Workstream is terrific, and it kind of comes from the top. And thank you to all the restaurateurs out there who are doing the hard work to make this place special and allow me to kind of go out and find another great meal this evening.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Geoff. Thank you for your time today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. Thank you.